Okay, here we go. Question number 1. What is your idea of perfect happiness? Gee, thanks, Harv. Well, I think happiness is basically a state of mind. It's an attitude. And I think it's basically, it's not inspired by the outside world, it's just a way of looking at the outside world. So, perfection, that's another concept I'm not particularly keen on, but generally speaking, I tend to be happier outdoors than I am indoors. It's a really difficult question to answer. I mean, my idea of perfect happiness is basically, I'm sorry to come over all hippie about it, but it's basically to be in the place, in the time, and with the right attitude. And question 2 as well, what is my greatest fear? Well, I can't say I'm looking forward to death, but I'm not exactly afraid of it. I just can't see the point of being, of spending your life worrying about it ending. It seems to be quite a waste of it, really. As far as that goes, I think I'm even less looking forward to the possibility of dementia. I've seen my mother go through it, and one of my contemporaries has just died from it. I really, I think I fear that more than death, really. But one thing I had noticed is when I was with people who were dementing, was that although sometimes they were often unhappy, they weren't unhappy because they were dementing. They didn't know they were demented. They were unhappy because they just were aware something was wrong. But at other times, they were very happy for no apparent reason. So I don't think it's. I think probably one of my less apocalyptic fears is having to give up dope, having to give up smoking dope because I can no longer get it. Not just me, but all of the people I was ever involved with and so on are all getting on. They're all up there, sort of around the 70 mark. And well, I do know a few younger people. It's just, yeah. I mean, so, and of course, when I suffer from anxiety, which I do occasionally, it's basically, the greatest fear is really fear itself. Number 3, what do you most dislike about your appearance? Well, my size, the fact that I've got a head like a cube, which of course I don't know about until I see myself in things like this, or some kind soul takes a picture of me from the side. I don't realise just how square the back of my head is. But again, it's not something I trouble myself over very much. Which talent would you most like to have? Well, I have so many already. I wouldn't want to be too greedy. But I expect it wouldn't come as a surprise to anybody on here to know that I have absolutely no talent whatsoever for music. I can't sing. I certainly can't play an instrument. I can't really understand what's going on. I mean, I can react to it the way any sort of basic hedonic human would, but that's to say, not like my mother, who was anhedonic, who just couldn't stand music, for instance. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to be able to sing. I'd like to be able to carry a tune. I'd like to be able to understand what a tune was. And I'd like to be able to hear. I mean, I can't stand the sound of my voice recorded, so I probably won't be looking back at this with any great joy. Anyway, yeah, that's the talent I'd like to have, to be able to sing. I mean, I'd like a few superpowers as well, but, that's not quite what was asked. What do you consider your greatest achievement? I don't really look at things like that. I'm quite proud of various bits of art I've done, not because I think they are great, but because they actually did what I wanted them to do. I think my relationship with Chip was a great achievement. It was 30 years, it involved a hell of a lot of compromise, distress, fighting, work, not physically fighting with each other, but you know, fighting to get things right, fighting with myself to get things right. And otherwise, I think it's just basically getting here. I don't have. I only ever had modest ambitions. I wanted to write a novel. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to have a relationship with somebody, and I kind of achieved all of those, one way and another. Or alternatively, I did what I always do. I modified my desires in order to in order to be happy. I mean, basically, it's so much easier to change your mind than it is to change the world. It's so much easier to sort of not to desire things you can't have or that are going to cause you distress or whatever. Perhaps even realising that and realising that to be happy with what you have is sort of my greatest achievement. And of course, going back to question one, it's also perhaps my idea of perfect happiness. It's basically to be content with what you have, where you are, what you're actually doing at the time you're doing it. Question 6, what is your most treasured possession? Well, I'm not keen on possessions, which is weird because I've got so many of them. It's been I've been trying to sort of get rid of them, to downscale them, to sort them, to deal with them, to dispose of them. It's the best word, dispose in the original sense of the word, to sort of find a position in the world for them, which is not necessarily in my house, for some time. But I think that, of course, I can't really talk about people as possessions, and even sort of himself, who you saw on my lap earlier. I mean, I don't, you know, I treasure him greatly and love him dearly, but I'm not going to. I can't really think of him as my possession. I'm going to be sort of just like I've been for all the other questions, and probably will be for the rest of them. I'm just going to be sort of very dull and say that, you know, it's my my sense of self, my sense of personal integrity, my idea of things I will and won't do, my idea of myself, and as a sort of, you know, decent, loyal, kind, happy human being. My greatest regret, well, again, you know, I mean, despite the song, I don't have very many. I don't, you know, I may have a few, but I don't think there's a great deal of reward in dwelling on the past any more than dwelling on the future in the sense of ambition. I mean, I think that basically just there have been things I've done which made me unhappy, which made other people unhappy, which but that sort of thing, and of course I regret that, but I can't do anything about it. I don't think there's any point to regret unless it leads to some sort of kind of corrective action. So I really don't know. I mean, it's because basically my whole philosophy of life is about being content with how things have worked out. And there's no point in regretting the past. Oh, I could have done something better then, because you're basically expressing lack of content with the present to which that past has led you. I mean, the state vectors have collapsed, and you're on this path, and it couldn't have been any other way. And if you're happy, as I am, with how you are now, then I just see. I mean, I regret. For instance, I mean, there's just little things that I think I wish rather than I regret. For instance, that all the great gigs I went to, I can remember anything at all about the music that I heard and so on, and anything at all really about other than the fact that I attended the gig. I saw that person. I don't remember what they looked like. I don't pull anything out of that which is sort of meaningful or joyful. Which living person do I most despise? Well, I'm beginning to feel a bit sort of unfriendly towards Harv for setting me these questions. No room for jokes. I find it impossible to despise anybody I've ever met. I despise anybody. You know, as the old saying goes, it's very difficult to hate people one at a time. But it's quite a lot easier to hate people as a group, as a mass, and I really don't like that. If it's a person representing an idea, well, I mean, Ayn Rand is dead, unfortunately, but Ayn Rand is the exact antithesis of everything I am, I feel, and care about. That whole sort of I don't like objectivists. I don't like people who sort of insist that they're right. And I don't despise them, because the whole part of my philosophy, the whole part of this auto-theism that I talk about, is that basically everybody, every fucking person in the world, and indeed, as far as I'm concerned, possibly most of the sort of the insects and vertebrates and so on, they're all gods, because they all create the world in which they live, with their senses, with their brains, with what they learn, with how they feel, with their experiences. That's what creates the world, not some sort of, not a deity. There is no such thing as objectivity. There is only subjectivity. I mean, we all agree on things, and there's definitely consensus about what things are. So I'm not trying to sort of be ridiculously solipsistic here. It just seems to me that that everybody I've met is different. Everybody sees the world differently. Everybody thinks differently to each other and to me. This doesn't trouble me. This gives me great joy. It doesn't worry me that people act in ways that I would never think and act. That's just how they are. I mean, that said, I'm not particularly fond of several people involved with football. Their name is Legion, and almost all politicians and so on. But despise, I mean, they're obviously sort of risible and nasty, but I can't really despise anybody that I know. I can't really. Let me think. I mean, no, I just can't. Sorry, I'm being. My current state of mind. Question 9. Well, I'm confused. I'm confused and a little bit stoned, but not quite stoned enough. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm mellow. I'm glad to be doing this. I'm glad I've got this out of the way. I've got lots of other things on my mind. I've got sort of lots of prospects of things to do in the future. I've got a new garden to create. I've got to sort out more than this one corner of the house, which I've set dressed for this specific purpose. I may even have a job, which is something, a job working at home, which is something nice to look forward to. Doing the sort of thing I always used to do with writing and editing, helping somebody else with a book. Can't talk about that now, but I'll just sort of mention it because it bears on how I feel and my current state of mind. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good, Harv. I mean, how are you? Question 10: how would you like to die? And the simple pat answer to that is not particularly. But I don't think of it. I mean, I know how I'd like to live, and I know how I'd like to continue to go on living. I'm no fan of pain. I'm no fan of, particularly of, well, you know, I mean, I would like to die sentient. I would like to die poor. Terrible waste to sort of die with a load of money and possessions and stuff. That's what I mean. I'd like to die poor. I'd like to die shriven. Not of my sins, because I don't believe in them, but of my stuff, of my accumulations. And, you know, I'd always had I always kept a tab of LSD, because I thought if ever I know I'm going to die, I'm going to take some LSD before I know I'm going to die. But hell, you just don't know when you're going to die, and LSD goes off, and I don't suppose I'll be doing that. I've seen people die. I saw my father die, I saw my wife die, I saw my grandmother die. And I don't know if there is a good way or a bad way, but I mean, I just know what it is just a stop. They just go. I can't see that there's any difference in method or whatever that actually makes hell of a dot of a difference to the fact, as the sheer fact of just cessation, removal, loss. So, you know, I guess the answer is, you know, not much. You know, I don't really want to die. I accept that I will die because I'm in my 70s. You know, I mean, I can no longer sort of claim any sort of sense of teenage immortality that I used to have. With my father dying when I was 18 years old, took care of that anyway, for a while. And then I kind of rebuilt it, my life that is. And my views and what I felt about dying, and now, I mean, it's just there. And you know, my friend, I spent a weekend away this weekend, and with a guy I know from school, and you know, I stood there and I looked at him and I realised that basically if you add up his age and my age, it comes to almost exactly 144 years. And that's gross. Ha ha ha. See, I got a joke in at the end. I finally, Harv, or Colin, or John, as I really ought to call him, has slipped in a bonus question. I didn't know we could do that. How do you feel about the Supermarine Spitfire aeroplane? Well, growing up in the 50s, I got an idea of there being something heroic about the Spitfire, which won the Battle of Britain, blad blah-de bloop. And the war was huge when I was growing up in my life. It just, I mean, although I was born 3 years after it ended, everything, when I heard adults talking, it was all about what happened in the war, what happened after the war, what happened before the war. The war was this thing that was just there. And I had to come to terms with it. Plus the fact, of course, that films and TV about the Second World War, not documentaries, just fictional stuff that was made during the war, stuff that was made soon after the war. There's just so many stories to be told. That whole celebration of empire, that was all there. And the Spitfire was part of it. But basically, how I feel about it now, I don't feel anything about it now. I hate militarism. I don't really like airplanes a lot. I mean, you can say it on the environmental grounds, but the experience of flying it, I went in a plane, it's like posting yourself somewhere. There's no sense of movement. You sit in a fucking hermetically sealed space, and you know, get on. First of all, you go to a horrible area which is just alien to my every concept of how I want to be and sort of what I've regarded as a pleasant environment. They're called airports. And then you go out of there, you walk across this bleak, windswept piece of bloody tarmac, you climb up into this machine, you shut yourself in, and then you sort of, you know, you get fed rubbishy food, and a few hours later, you uncoil your cramped legs, you stagger out into another place, you've got to go through some more fucking humiliation, which I believe is called customs, then you go to another bleak and horrid place called an airport, and then suddenly you're somewhere else. But there's no sense of having moved, there's no sense of having gone anywhere, which is all by the by, of course, because, you know, no passengers in a Spitfire. But then again, so I don't like aeroplanes, and I don't like the military. I don't like the military at all. I don't like even the fact that there is such a thing as a military. I think war is heck, and I just refuse to. I mean, it's sad. My grandson, in fact, both my grandsons are aged 11, 9, I think. Both of my grandsons are into aeroplanes, and my son indeed, you know. And they sort of go off and go to museums, they stare at these things, they make models of them, and they care about them. And I think that's a bit sad, but not hugely so, as it's not exactly my place to sort of care what they see, say, do or think. Anyway, that's quite enough of that.